This is Jacob's Algebra, Chapter 13, Lesson 8, the discriminant. This is part 2 of the video. So we've already done problems 4 through 7, which are just like problems 11 through 14 that I assigned for homework. Now we're going to do problems 8 through 10, which are just like 15 through 17 that I assigned for homework. These problems all use the same equations. So looking at number 8, we're going to start with part A. Number 8 says find the value of the discriminant for each of the following quadratic equations and use it to tell how many solutions the equation has. So let's look at x squared minus 6x plus 7 equals 0. This is already in standard form, so we can write out our a, b, and c. A equals 1 because when there's no number there, it's understood to be 1. B equals negative 6. Make sure you grab the negative when there is a negative there. And then C equals 7. Now our discriminant is b squared minus 4ac. So our b is negative 6. When we square that, we get 36. And then we'll write minus 4, and then we're going to have it times a times c. Our a is 1. Our c is 7. 4 times 1 times 7 is 28. So this is 36 minus 28. And 36 minus 28 is 8. Since our discriminant is greater than 0, that means that we will have 2 solutions. Now let's look at part B. Part B is x squared, where'd it go? X squared plus 3x plus 6 equals 0. Okay, so we're going to get our A, B, and C. Our A is 1, our B is 3, our C is 6. Plug that into b squared minus 4ac. Our b is 3. When we square that, we get 9. Minus 4 times a times c. Our a is 1. Our c is 6. And we have 9 minus 4 times 1 times 6 is 24. That value is negative 15. Since our b squared minus 4ac is less than 0, that means that we have no solutions. Okay, let's look at part C. That says 4x squared plus 4x plus 1 equals 0. So our A is 4, our B is 4, and our C is 1. We need to write out b squared minus 4ac. Our b is 4, so b squared, our b squared is not 36, our b squared is 16. Minus 4 times a times c. Our a is 4, our c is 1. 16 minus 4 times 4 is 16. That's 16 minus 16 equals 0. When our b squared minus 4ac equals 0, that means that we have one solution. So remember, if your discriminant is greater than 0, you have 2 solutions. If it's equal to 0, we have one solution. If it's less than 0, we have no solutions. So we're going to skip over to number 9. Number 9 says use the graphs of the equations given below to estimate the solutions to the following equations. So what you need to do for this, you do not have to do any graphing for this. The graphs are already given for you. You just have to estimate where you see the graph crossing your x-axis. So for part A, the graph crosses the x-axis. It looks like about at x equals 2 and maybe x equals 4.5. So I'm going to say x equals 2 and 4.5. Those look like the 2 solutions. For part B, it doesn't touch the x-axis at all, so I'm going to say no solutions. For part C, it just touches the x-axis and it looks like it's about 1/2. So I'm going to say x equals 1/2. For part D, it crosses the x-axis. It looks like it's about -2 and +2.5. So I'll say x equals -2 and +2.5. Now notice for part A we got 2 solutions. For part B we got no solutions. And for part C we got 1 solution. Well, these are the same equations, remember, that we just did. So we had 2 solutions, no solutions, and 1 solution. We didn't do part D before, so I didn't compare that one. Now let's look at number 10. Number 10 says to use the quadratic formula to solve those exact same equations. And what you should get is the same number of solutions that your discriminant tells you, and you should get about the same values that you estimated from looking at the graphs. So for number 10, let's do part A. Part A says x squared minus 6x plus 7 equals 0. And our quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Remember that our a is 1, our b is negative 6, and our c is 7. So we can plug those numbers in here, and we have x equals negative b, the negative of negative 6 is a positive 6, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. We don't have to calculate that again because we've already calculated it. B squared minus 4ac for part A was 8. So we can just put that value in there and say that this is the square root of 8. All over 2a, our a is 1, so 2a is 2. Now the square root of 8 can be simplified. So I'm going to say x equals 6 plus or minus. This is going to be 2 root 2, and this is all over 2. When we simplify this, we get 3 plus the square root of 2. And it says to give the answer in decimal form, correct to the nearest hundredth. When we put this in a calculator, 3 plus or minus square root 2, what we get is 4.42 and 1.59. So let's go back and see what we estimated as our values. What we estimated was 2 and 4.5. And what I actually got was 1.6 and 4.4. So somewhat close, but not exactly on the spot. Let's look at part B. For part B, the equation is x squared plus 3x plus 6 equals 0. Remember that our a equals 1, our b equals 3, and our c equals 6. So we're going to plug this into the quadratic formula, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Our negative b is going to be negative 3 plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. Well, we can go back and look that up. Our b squared minus 4ac for part B was a negative 15. So we'll put in a negative 15 all over 2a, so that's 2. This has no solutions because we are taking the square root of a negative number, and we can't do that in Algebra 1. So for part B, the answer is no solutions. And if you remember looking back at our graph for number 9, we had no solutions because the graph did not touch or cross the x-axis. Now let's get another new page and look at number 10C. Number 10C, the equation was 4x squared plus 4x plus 1 equals 0. So our A is 4, our B is 4, and our C is 1. So let's plug those into our formula. We have x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So we'll plug our values in. Our negative b is negative 4 plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. We actually already calculated in part A. I'm sorry, in number 8. B squared minus 4ac for part C was 0. So we will make that 0. All over 2a, our a is 4, so all over 2a means all over 8. So our x is going to equal negative 4/8, which is negative 1/2. So let's look back at number 9 and see what we estimated. For number 9, part C, we have a positive 1/2. Okay. Let's see. Oh, I don't know why I have a positive 1/2. It is clearly on the negative side. So for number 9, part C, that should have been a negative 1/2, not a positive 1/2. Okay, and that's all that I'm going to do for these. Part D, we've already done one just like it that has 2 solutions. So remember that for Chapter 13, Lesson 8, your homework problems, number 11 through 14 all use the same 3 equations. And then numbers 15 through 17 all use the same 3 equations. So all use the same 4 equations. So it's not a whole bunch of different equations that you're going to be finding answers for. And make sure that your answers for the different problems using the same equation all agree. When you're estimating an answer, you might not get an exact answer, but you should get something in the same range.